Hello folks, I'm going to do some things here to try and help you get started with this project. So I will make a new Photoshop document here, and I want print for a higher resolution. And let's go ahead and do a letter size picture. Turn to the side, make sure this is in inches, 300 dpi or pixels per inch. The background color I will go ahead and make black, but it doesn't necessarily matter. I'll hit create. Go to File, and then to Place. So we can use Open to bring in an image, but Place will also bring in an outside image. And what I want to do is bring in a background. And I will go ahead and do Place Linked. Place Embedded brings the whole image file in here, so it takes up more size, whereas Linked makes a dynamic link to it. Okay, my downloads. I happen to have a haunted house picture. Now, if I don't mind stretching this, I could try and drag it out a little bit more. You'll notice that we have this up here that locks the width to the height. So if I turn that off, I could stretch it, but it might look bad. I'll see how it looks here. I'm going to fill the background. Or if you don't want it stretched, you can just pull it so it goes off the edges of the canvas. I don't think that's too bad, so I'll go ahead and either hit Enter or this check mark. And now have a layer here. If you can't find the layers palette, make sure you go up to Window, and then we can bring in anything we need here, like layers. I also recommend History, because this lets you go back through all the things you've done. It gives you up to, I think it's 50 levels of undo, so at any time you can click back to a previous state. You can also take a snapshot of the current state or create a new document from the current state if you're changing things around. So this is handy to have. And I'll hit this to minimize it to the side, there. I should have properties, adjustments, libraries, swatches, gradients, layers, channels, paths. I can go up here to Window, and I can also choose a workspace depending on what I'm doing. So I think I will try photography here just to see what it looks like. So that changes things a little bit. Kind of like the way I had it before. So I will go back to Essentials. If you ever move a palette, like say you move these tools and you lose them, you can go to Window, Workspace, and then Reset, and it will say whichever one you're in. So Reset Essentials. Okay. Next, I'm going to go ahead and bring in our pumpkin. So I'll do Place Linked as well here. Actually, for you students, you might want to do Place Embedded, because I'll have you set your file after the fact. So let's cancel this and do Place Embedded. File, Place Embedded. Because the other option you'd have to send all these pictures with. Now I should have them on my computer, but just to be on the safe side. Okay, so I want to remove the background here. So first I have to basically say the size is appropriate. Resize it if I want. I'm going to have this in the foreground. And I can hit Enter or this check mark once it's sized. Then I will use whatever selection tool I would like here to select the pumpkin and the post. In this case, I'm using the magnet selection, or magnet lasso. Well, a little crazy there. I'm going to hold Shift to add to the selection. You can also use other tools. Remember, if you're holding Shift, it's going to add to the selection, and if you hold Option or Alt on a PC, it will take away from the selection. Now, there is something here called Quick Mask, and it's right down here below the foreground and background colors. So I can hit Edit Quick Mask Mode or hit Q, and what this does is it shows me how my selection is looking, and if I want to alter it, well, that's not letting me click here. So if I want to alter it, I can paint with the brush too. And one thing to know about the brush is that you can paint with a soft edge or a hard edge. A soft edge is like an airbrush and will actually fade out the visibility of something. That's accomplished here with the hardness slider. So I can set this to whatever size I want. Also, if you want shortcut keys, you can hit the left square bracket if you want to paint with a larger brush. And you can see as I hit the square brackets, the left makes it smaller, the right makes it larger. I do think I want a hard edge here. I don't need any sort of softness or fading in my selection. This is an either or type of thing. Letting go of the brush each stroke so that I can undo them individually. Quick tip with the brush, if you hold it down and do a whole bunch of stuff with one stroke, if you have to undo it, then you lose all your brush strokes. So I tend to work in smaller segments like that so I can undo them one at a time. If you hold down spacebar, you will temporarily use the hand tool to move around the screen. So I'm hitting X to switch to black. X is the same as hitting this button here. It just switches these two. Now I do want my opacity 100% too, because I don't need it to be faded or partially transparent as far as the selection. Taking all or nothing approach here. Now there's some other tools you could use for something like this. Because this is very round, the pen tool would be an ideal option. One other thing about Quick Mask, if you double click it, you can change how you're viewing it. So I could make the color red or say green, and I can change the opacity of it. So if I hit Q, that's a different way I can see this. And the opacity, of course, is the opposite of transparency. So it just allows different ways to see what I am and I'm not selecting. Now once I have a selection active, one other quick point about Q, by the way, or quick mode. So whatever's green is not selected, and whatever is not green will be selected. If I needed the opposite of that, I could go to selection up here where you control selections, and I could do an invert. That would make it, the pumpkin is not selected, but everything else is. Now, the way this, or the reason this matters is because whatever action I take next is going to only affect the selected area. So I will invert this back. What I want to do, basically, is select the pumpkin on the pole. And then down here in layers, there is this square with a circle in the middle called layer mask. So when I hit that, it automatically removes everything that's not selected. But it does it here with what we call mask. So this mask can be edited later if you were to select the mask itself, not the layer, and then paint with a brush using white or black, or say 50% gray. Really any shade between black and white, it will change whether or not it is transparent. So for instance, on the brush here, if I switch to black, X, and I start painting, notice it's making this layer invisible. If I switch to white and paint, it's visible. And I can also use the faded brush I talked about with a softer edge to fade out the visibility or fade it in. So here you'll notice, based on my brush size, that it's a soft edge. I can turn the layer off and on here to see what's behind it. Now I want to have it match the background a little bit, so I'm going to zoom out. And I will go to curves, which is one of these adjustment layers. So adjustment layers tend to have ways to adjust the layers below them non-destructively. And what I mean by non-destructively is that they sit on a layer above it that you can take away at any time. They don't actually permanently alter the layer. So just so you know, these will not be permanent. I just want to make sure this is recording my audio. Okay, so I'll click on the layer, and I can affect it with blending modes here. I'll do various things. This determines how it interacts with the layer behind it. But in this case, I want to do something that affects the layer itself. So I'll click on this little circle down here. Notice if I mouse over it and leave my mouse there for a second, it should show me some things about it. Maybe. I'll try this again. Having trouble getting it to pop up now, but you saw it earlier, I think. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to choose curves. And curves gives you a graph that shows all the tones in here from the darkest, and this has a lot of dark tones in the background, working up to the lightest. Now, for all of these adjustment layers, if I click this button here, it only affects the layer immediately below it. Otherwise, this is not clicked, it affects all the layers below it. So I'll hit this so only the pumpkin layer is affected. Now, this in the background doesn't have a lot of huge highlights, so I'm guessing my highlights here will probably not be as bright. I want to kind of have them match the brightest highlight here. Now I will carve a glowing face into this. So picturing that there'll be light kind of in front of it, I can either paint that light in layer or I can try and use these curves adjustments to tackle it myself. You can make points anywhere you need to in here. Now if you put a lighter point darker than a dark point, or vice versa, like if I put a dark point lighter than the lighter side over here, some weird stuff can happen. So this will reset it, or you can hit undo to reset just last thing you did. So I'm taking my lightest highlights down, and then I'm mainly going to play with this midpoint here and kind of see where I think it might be good. Now the other thing I can do in here is affect color. So I'm sliding up to the top. Mine has a scroll bar because of my image size. There's some presets here, but what I want to do now is affect just one of the colors. So basically, I'm going to try and set it so that my highlight using this eyedropper is the same as this highlight. My shadows are the same as this shadow. My midtones are about the same as a midtone somewhere in this picture. Okay. Now, if that doesn't work, I can just do it manually, or I can slide this. So I'm going to go ahead and hit previous state. Oh, this you can use to temporarily see the last state. I will hit Command Z to step back. Oh, okay, I was actually wrong about that. I guess I can't step back through individual things in the curves layer itself, so it's kind of an all or nothing thing. That's fine. Let's click here again and say curves. My adjustments again. Oh yeah, I have to click this once again to make it just affect the pumpkin there. Now I want to go into the colors and I want to work with what I need to change. So looking at this image behind it, I don't see a whole lot of red. So what I might need to do is work with the amount of red until I get some shadows and highlights that match more of what we have here. Now that's a little too green. We have a lot of yellow back here, so red and green tend to make that color. I'll see if I can pull out a little blue. Add a little blue. Maybe take out a little green. Besides looking pretty green, I want to be more kind of yellow. So it's all just about balancing the colors here. You can also click here, pull a color out of a particular piece of the image. So I'll click and hold. If I drag down, it's going to take red out. If I slide up, it will put it back in, but it does in that specific area that you're clicking on. So here, I might want to add one more red maybe to try to make it more yellow. Now another option is we could go in here and we could do some selective colors, and we could try selective color. So that will allow me to take something like reds and add more yellow or black to it. Cyan, magenta. This controls how light or dark those reds are. So I can try and dial into maybe what's on the back of the haunted house. Okay, so to keep this brief, I'm not going to mess with this forever, but you kind of get the idea. In my curves here, I might go back to this and I want to take some green out of the wood here. Let's try and get a little green. So basically, we're going to try and dial things in. Keep going until you get it fairly realistic. Same thing on this. I need to make sure it only affects the pumpkin layer too, not the haunted house. Actually, I should have done that first before messing with the pumpkin. So you could go back through here and really dial this in. All right, I'm going to choose a selection tool to make my face. Now I will hold Shift to add to this selection. I'm going to move this out of the way. And now I just want to freehand this next part, so I'll do lasso. Now I have to hold Shift again, or up here, click to add to the selection. Now there's lots of ways you could do this next part. We have Edit, and we could do something like a fill to fill it with a certain color. What I'm going to do is make a new layer. These layers can't hold pixels. You can't draw on them or anything or put a photo in them. They only exist to adjust what's below them. So if I want actual content here, I have to make a new normal layer, which I did with this down here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and put in what we call a gradient. And if I go to Window, there should be a Gradients tab I can bring out too. So I want to create a new gradient. And what I can do in here is choose a color for each of what we call stops. And I can add colors too. So it smoothly blends from one color to another or across several. So maybe I will figure out color I can use by clicking in the color bar. Okay, I will click on the gradient here, and I can hit OK. I can put in a name too. So I'll put pumpkin and hit new. So that should be in my swatches tab over here now too if I need it again. I'm going to use my gradient tool and drag across here. I'm going to have to go back and select my pumpkin one there. And I can do a radial gradient, a freeform gradient, um, a bar gradient, whatever kind I need. I'm going to try radial here. Now I want to reverse these so the yellow is on the inside and the orange is to the center. Now if you want to make this even better, you can go in, use your lasso tool, add a little bit of a 3D effect. So I will choose my polygonal lasso again. And I can hold shift if I want to make everything the same color, add to it. Or once again, I can click up here. Actually, I'm going to hit Command Z because I should do this one on the other side. Now because it's adding to the selection, messed up a little bit more, but since I'm adding to it, I just need to get that part I missed. And we could do the same down here. So I could either do a different formless gradient, or I can make it darker, or wherever I need it. I could also go to layers. I can make another layer just for this area. So I'm going to say content should be black, and I could make the visibility or the opacity 50%. You can also change the blending mode here if you wanted to. Click on the layer and do something darken, multiply, etc. Now to get rid of the current selection, I'm going to go to deselect. You can hit Command D. I'm on a PC, so I get Control D. But Command A will select everything. Command D will deselect what's currently selected. Now to add a little bit of a glow here, I'm going to make a new layer. And I'm just going to use my paintbrush. I'll hit I, which is an eyedropper, and lets me grab that color and put it in the foreground. I'm going to increase my brush size quite a bit. I'll put it at 2% opacity. And I will kind of paint in Or I think light might fall if this were lit up. Now the cool thing about having this on its own layer is we can go through and we can change this blending mode. Make it look more realistic if we want to. And we can also change the opacity, make it more transparent. You could even do raisable light, filtering out through here, all sorts of options when it comes to Photoshop. Now, you can move layers in front and behind each other. I might want to move that front if I want to be darker. It's kind of up to you. You can, of course, go back in and paint on the mouth layer too if you want to make the 3D look more realistic. Okay, we'll hit Command 0 to zoom out, fit everything in screen. Next, I will go in and place my witch image. So, place embedded. This one looks kind of witchy. But I do want to have you try some witch makeup too. So I think this one's good for that. Now raw images, which this is, much like what comes from your camera, you can hit get started on this. Raw images will always pull up in a raw importer first that allows you to change a lot of things on them, such as the temperature, light bounce, etc. So seeing as this might be in the glow of the moon, I might make some adjustments first here. And then I can adjust my exposure, lightness or darkness, contrast, anything I need to here, highlights, etc. Shadows. And once I have all of this stuff set, notice you can scroll down here. You can see so that's the original. That's what we have now. We can go in up here, crop it, which I will do because I don't care about the top half of the image. We can do some blemish reduction here, but there's also tools for it inside Photoshop. I'm going to use my square brackets to make this slightly different size. And I will go through and take out anything I need to here. And then I'll hit OK. We're going to resize this to whatever size we need, and then hit OK. I can hit Command T if I need to resize it further. So we'll place it, and we'll go ahead and try and take out the background here. Now this is tricky because we have strands of hair. So you'll have to watch the videos I shared about how to remove the background. One feature I do want to point out that is mentioned in some of the videos is that we do have a select mask tool, which I'll demonstrate. Now this might be because this is still a smart object, I could right click it and say rasterize layer, which will convert it to just pure pixels. Try again. Now this should be able to sense the subject, and this tool uses AI, Adobe Sensei AI. See how it does. Pretty good. So you can switch here as it's telling you to select a mask to get a closer look. Now I will use this to go ahead and make my layer mask. Now to get back into that, and edit my selection, I right click and say select a mask. This transparency setting will give you a preview of what it looks like in case you want to see more of the background. This hair, for instance, up here, if it's not visible, we won't be able to see it with the transparency turned up. So we'll probably have to go through and look here. So if I turn my transparency all the way up, I can still see these strands. Now, if anything is not getting brought in here, we can use this plus and minus along with the brush size here to go ahead and take some of that out or add it back in. So you'll want to use this Refine Edge tool. There's edge detection with Smart Radius, which you can turn on when using these tools, and this radius will affect how it decides what should be kept. We have smoothing, feather, which softens the edges of what's visible. You can add contrast, and you can shift the edge, contract the border inwards or outwards. In output settings, I recommend you do decontaminate colors if you're seeing any sort of weird fringing along the edges. Now that made the hair very brown, so I'm definitely going to take that out because that's not right. In the end, you can make that a new layer with a layer mask, or just a layer mask, a new document, everything else you need. You're done, hit OK. I'm going to hit Command minus to zoom out. Now I can go ahead and get rid of this since I have this new one up here. I can click on it and hit this garbage. Hit yes. The same thing here, we'll most likely want to do a curves adjustment layer or a selective color or whatever other tool you choose in here. Up some of these colors. Here's a quick tip. If you go to Window and go to Info and then go down here, what we're looking for is this color sampler here. You can do color sampler tool. So I'm going to go ahead and place one on a highlight, one on a mid-tone, and one on a shadow. That's going to give me RGB information here that I can use in curves to match. So, same thing in curves here. I will click this to make it go just to the layer with the lady. And in fact, I want my gradient palette to be smaller, so I'll go to where these two join until I get the up and down arrow and slide it up. All right, now in this case, I'm going to try and match some of those colors, so I can put down a highlight, maybe a shadow here. So notice these are numbered. Number 5, I'm seeing 19, 9, and 4 in the darker areas. And in number 4 here, 183, 124, 87. So I could try and match highlight 1 to highlight 4 using these RGB numbers. So let's see. Start with my red. And if I click this button here where I can slide it, and try taking my red down. So let's see, 4 is 183, and on spot 1 is 185, 105. Okay, green is at 124. I can try and make it 118. Then my blue is at 103. It's at 87, so I'm going to have to add some blue. So that's about the same color as that. I'll probably have to manually adjust it here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring some red back in so we get more natural color. Okay, it's looking a lot more like this now. I'm thinking I'm going to need a lot less green in the hair, because I can see that that's getting pretty dark there. See our shadows there, like 3. So spot 3, we're at 26, 28, 33. I'm going to match that to spot 5. So spot 5, I'm going to take this up to 33. Oops, and I'm on my green, so that needs to be 28. So I'm just matching this number to this number. Next is my red. So it's 26. My current one is at 8. Then my blue is at 5. It needs to be at 33. You know, once again, if it doesn't look right to you, just go ahead and manually adjust it. Now, if you get too many points here, you might actually have to delete one. I can click that and hit delete, etc. So long story short, I'm going to try and get it as accurate as possible. In this case, I'm just going to go for it myself. Try and eyeball it. So try and get it as accurate as possible. You can make it darker, lighter too with the RGB here. Some highlights and midtones, and my shadows. So up will lighten this, shadows. Down will darken it. Now at this point you want to go through and do your blemish editing. So that will be done on this layer here with the person. These are the tools we'll be using: spot healing brush, remove tool, healing brush, patch tool, content aware, and red eye. Spot healing, you just make the tool slightly larger than any blemish. So here, for instance, I'm going to use my square brackets so it's slightly bigger. And it's a fairly automatic tool. Remove tool is fairly new, so let's see how it works. I think this is one of its AI assisted tools. It's taking a while. Okay. The healing brush tool, you have to use Alt. Hold down Alt and click to tell it an area to pull clean skin from. So notice it's pulling from the target there to replace the areas where I'm painting. And of course, you can change the size of this as well. Patch tool takes a whole area and replaces it with a whole another area. You can kind of see a preview here. And then it tries to blend in the color in the edges. So you'll notice all these pores are gone. That looks more like this area, but it is blended in. Now, this tool can easily look fakey. You can see how the skin looks next to the other more porous skin. So be very careful with it. So we can use these tools mainly to get rid of any issues. So you want to go ahead and retouch the photo, make it look as nice as possible. Once that is all done, you can make any witchy changes that you feel should be on this. Remember, we can hit Select D to get rid of this. I will go ahead and move up here. For doing witchy makeup, what I would recommend doing is making a new layer somewhere here. I'll click here and click new layer. Oops, accidentally click group. Just so you're aware, you can put groupings of files into a group so you can turn them all off and on at once. I didn't mean to do that though. Okay. Now with the selection, what I want to do is have a soft selection around the eyes at the edge, and then a hard selection here where it meets the eyelashes. So there's lots of ways we could do this. One way we'll see if the select object can automatically select the eye. It's going to select this person as a whole object. Quick selection tool is an intriguing thing. It'll try and use AI to figure out an area, and you can help it adjust. Oh, one other thing, I do have to hit sample all layers. It can't detect anything because this layer is empty. Sample all layers lets me work on this layer, but use the pixel data from the layer below it. In this case, layers. I'll try this again. It's still selecting the whole object, so it's fine. We'll do quick selection. Now I will hold Alt or hit negative to start taking away from the selection. And I'm trying to train it what I do and don't want with selection. Now I want to add a selection to it. So over here, kind of get the other eye and try and get some eyelashes. Now these eyelashes can be tricky. So there's some other ways we could do this. What I would do next, I would basically make selection eyes and eyelashes. And then I would try to invert it and fade it out around the edges using either brush and quick mask mode or some other method. Well, I'll show you another way this might be done here. That would take a bit of work. We can hit select, deselect. I can make a very general shape around the eyes with this rounded one. If I hold shift, deal. Now these aren't too even, but that's fine. When you have a selection, you can go in and actually transform a selection. Here's a problem though, it's going to move both these like one object down, which isn't necessarily what I want. So I'll cancel that. What I'll probably do with these is solve it by painting them out later with black and white. So I will go to select, and then I will go to modify, feather, and I'll do 30 pixels. Now if I hit Q, you can see it's really fading out here. That gives us a good basis to start, then we can use some other methods to kind of finish that selection. I'm going to hit brush right now though, decrease the size. Hit X to get it blacker, to black color, and kind of use a soft brush edge to adjust these. I'm switching white to change what is included. I want very soft around here because it's like makeup that's blended out to the edges, like eyeshadow. Now, none of this in the brush is 100% opacity, so I need to kind of adjust that because that soft brush is going to get more apparent when we turn this into a selection. So right now I'm just thinking about fading out to the edges. So I'm going to undo that with Command Z, or I could use this guy up here, right, to click back. X to switch to white, etc. And since I moved my brush up to 100% and I have a soft edge, I'll actually go around this once more just to make sure I really have it dialed in. Okay, I hit Q, or this button here, to get out of quick mask, so I have a very soft selection. Now it looks like just a line here, but that's just the way it shows the selection to you. So what I want to do next is remove the eyes from that. I can go to Select, Color Range. This is one way. I could also use Select a Mask. Now I want to tell it to take out this from the selection. Actually, I'm going to cancel this. So let's talk about another way to do it. Go back to my selection tool, and I could do Select a Mask. Oh, yeah, I can't use that quite yet because I haven't actually made a mask with this. So I'll go ahead and do that. Now, we can't see anything yet here. That's okay because we don't have a color here. I could hit a brush, change the color. Just kind of brush in. Oops, I'm on the mask. I need to be on the layer. Brush in whatever color we need. For some reason, it went to black because I was on this layer. That only takes grayscale data. So once I'm on the layer, I should be able to find a good green. Now notice it won't go, even if I brush outside this, it won't go past that. And the reason being, because our mask fades it out. And you can see the mask is actually fading out that part because I bet you when I was painting with the 50% opacity brush, let's see, you can Alt-click or Option-click this, yeah. So I didn't get this all the way white. That's why this layer's not showing all the way through there. If I were to hit this, you could actually paint that white in the mask. And then Alt-click this again. Okay, so now we can do the Select a Mask if we want. Now, honestly, what I think will be easier, you could go through and try and do it that way, but what I think is easier is to select Lady and just completely turn off this for now. With the Lady selected, we can use this, try and select the lashes and eyes, because we don't want And once again, I'm using Alt to remove parts of it. We don't want the eyeshadow to show up in that spot. I'm going to go to a much smaller brush size here, and I can try and include eyelashes. And I can also take away areas I don't need. By using the subtract. We could take that selection, and you can actually save the selection and subtract it from the other one here. So save and load selection will save this. So I could go to our other selection and load this in to subtract it from the one for the eyes. That'd be one way. Or I could go, once I've got my selection pretty good, I'm going to invert it so it's everything except the eyes. I could also go in and make an adjustment layer, such as solid color. No, it didn't load that selection in as a mask though, which is what we want it to do. Step back. So I hit Q. Basically, this color should go everywhere except the eyes. But if selection's active, it should automatically become a mask. You do an adjustment layer. Try this one more time. Okay, there it is. It's just hard to see. I think it'll be easier to go about a slightly different way. I'll step back once. So right now, we have everything except the eye selected. Let's make a new layer here. Instead of doing adjustment, if I go to brush, I paint with that green around it, we get the softness but exclude the eyes. Now we can take our opacity here, start to lower that a little. We can also change this blending mode. See these affected differently. Now, because this is a layer mask, we should be able to go in and paint this in or make another mask that makes it so that these areas are included. Since I got rid of the mask, I could also just zoom in and paint it in with a brush if I feel like I'm good at that. This is especially helpful if you're using one of the drawing tablets at your table. Notice that we zoom in far enough, we're looking at this from a pixel level. Also, depending on which blending mode you use, if it covers the eyelashes, it might not be the end of the world because some of these blending modes here show through dark spots a lot better. So it's hard to tell. So go through and do whatever witchy makeup you think might be good. You can add in hats, etc. Now in this case, her arms look a little odd, so I could Photoshop in some sort of witch's dress over her perhaps, or even just kind of fade out the image. So I get a larger brush, and I make a mask here. Actually, I'll work on the mask we already have for her here. Then maybe we could put in some sort of black witch's dress or something around it, or draw a layer over top. Leave that up to you. Go ahead and add some elements in that you like in this. Lay dressed up. Last but not least, we have a way to make some witchy tattoos. So I could go in and grab suns, moons, whatever I need, symbols, or you could paint something in. Just gonna decrease my brush size. Make sure I'm working on new layers so it's independent from everything else. New layer here. Now, quick note, you can double click these and name them. This helps keep things straight. Now I'm drawing with the touchpad on my mouse right now, which is kind of difficult, so it's not going to be super awesome. But we'll try our best here. The key to making these look realistic is to right-click on the layer and go to Blending Options. Now there's sliders here for the current layer and underlying layer. And what they say is at what point in lightness or darkness is the layer visible. So since these are all the same color, they fade out almost immediately when we go past that point. One of the cool tricks though is that on the underlying layer, we can option click these sliders, split them apart so they are a range. So what we're saying is on the underlying layer, if it's a certain amount of light, like a highlight, this won't be as visible. It can be a little tricky to find the exact right setting. Now you can see in the pores here, the highlights are starting to come through. And up here where we have highlights, it looks a lot more realistic. Also keep in mind that you can change this blending mode here to something like overlay, lighten, darken or multiply, whatever we may need. After that, you'll just want to follow the rest of the requirements I have in the Google Doc. When you turn in the finished piece, you'll want to go to File, Save As, and then just make sure that it is a Photoshop PSD file and name it with your name and the assignment name. You do want to save immediately when you start this project and save frequently with Command S, otherwise you may lose your progress. So I need a Photoshop layer because that supports all the layers so I can look at your original work.